Welcome, man. Today's topic is it only takes one to save your marriage. And yes, I can prove it to you. That's our goal today. Okay. So let's kind of set the context because, this topic is probably one of the most triggering topics that you can talk about in marriage, um, probably next to cheating or affairs. I mean, if you look at the ads that we have running with this headline, the sheer amount of negativity and bullshit calling is just insane, right? Broken men who have been hurt and are a victim of their circumstances, really wanting to do nothing else but blame is the kind of the typical description of the type of person who would, get triggered by a headline like this. And while this headline is triggering, at the same time, this headline is very true, very accurate, and we have thousands of success stories to back it up. Not only that, it's not only true, it is the only way to save your marriage. And I cannot emphasize this enough, right? Thinking that you need your wife to save your marriage simply lets us know that you have no clear understanding of things like why and how marriage breaks down, your role in the marriage, your wife's role in the marriage, the top kind of key reasons why marriages don't really survive, right? How your insecurities operate and control you, and really how trust works. Okay, and this list goes on because there's so many aspects to consider. Either way, today we're going to focus on the 6 most important items to prove to you that you can actually save your marriage by yourself without your wife's involvement. You can actually take actions that have been proven to work time and time again, which will have your wife, see you in a different light. And that you can actually be in control of your situation much more than you really ever thought possible. And lastly, that you can be happy, empowered, while doing all of these things that I mentioned. Okay, so our goal is that by the end, you will understand why we say it only takes one to save your marriage, and that you are empowered to actually take the steps necessary to achieve that goal. Okay, also want to mention, as usual, that throughout today's training, we'll be giving you some actionable steps, right, to implement the things that we talk about around these topics, including 8 free resources. That's 8. Okay, 8 free resources that are valued over $1,000. And these resources have changed thousands of lives and their families, husbands and their families for the better. So, make sure you stick around so you don't miss out on them. All right. Okay. So let's get rolling and let's look at kind of the first key aspect of proving to you why it only takes one to save a marriage. Okay. First one up is she's checked out. All right. So by the time you realize that your marriage is in trouble, your wife is checked out. Okay. This is because as a man, you don't want to seriously work on your marriage only after your wife has given you the slap. Now, what the hell is the slap? Well, for anybody new, slap is the typical stuff. The I love you, but I'm not in love with you. I cheated on you, or, you found out that she cheated. She says, I want to separate. I want a divorce. These being the most common, but there's other stuff too, physical abuse. There's restraining orders and all kinds of other stuff. Now, at this point, your wife doesn't want to talk about the relationship or act on the relationship at all, right? She believes the grass is greener on the other side, and she has put up with your bullshit long enough. Now, this is regardless whether you agree with this or not, or whether you think it's true or not. I'm just telling you how she sees it. Okay? I'm not saying you're an asshole. I'm not saying you were bullshitting her. What I'm telling you is how she sees it with the glasses that she has on. And, we can fight that, but that's the goal here, is to give you more understanding, not to rebel against it, right? And if you are rebelling against it and you're unwilling, you're not open to have a look at this, then maybe the training is not for you, right? But if you're open to it, then keep listening, because we're going to be putting things into perspective from the place of how she sees things. Okay? Because this is her world. Okay? This is her view of you. This is the marriage and herself in the marriage, right? She's tired of the control. And whether that control is intentional or unintentional, whether you see it or not, I guarantee you there's control in the relationship from your end. For sure, from her end as well. But we're focusing on what we can control, which is what you do. Okay? So she's tired, exhausted. She feels suffocated. She doesn't feel heard and understood by you. And, she ultimately believes that she has lost her identity in the marriage as a woman and as a wife and as a mother, which means that she now believes that you are in the way of her happiness. And that happiness can only be obtained on the other side where you are not in that picture.
Wow. Wow, man, that feels like a slap right there, For some men who, just heard that, or just saying that, the reality of where they're at in their relationship will hit them like a ton of bricks. Imagine that's their starting point. This is where they need to recover from.
Yep.
And for a lot of men, it will seem like a potentially impossible battle to win. And we're going to dive deeper into this, but unless men really start to fully embrace your responsibility and ownership of where the relationship is at, well, then it will continue to be an impossible battle to win. And not only will it be an impossible battle to win, many lives will be lost in the process. Right? So really start to, Andre said it, like, hey, if you can't step into at least exploring this, at least taking on, even if it's only just for this video, the possibility of you being responsible for where the relationship is at, well then, yeah, maybe this training isn't for you. But like many thousands of men that have gone before you who have stepped into it, there's a lot available. But yeah, for now, let's just keep pressing on.
Yeah, and contextually, just before we move on, I do want to say one thing and really emphasize this. A lot of the things that we're going to say in this training today, unless you have the context that we are focusing on what you can control, which is the actions you take, and that we are focusing on how she's perceiving you, some of the stuff is going to be triggering. And it might even look like, oh, wow, they're taking her side, which has nothing to do with that. But we have enough tangible success, tangible time in the field, approaching a decade now since TBH has been in place, right? That we understand what she's going through. We can see it. We talk to enough wives about it, right? So just put on the context that we are in your corner. We're showing you how she perceives you. I get it. You may not see it that way. But at some point, you got to accept the fact that if the relationship is not working, then there's something you're not seeing. Okay? That's what we're going to help you with. Okay? So let's go into the second component or the second item. She has been working on the marriage for years. Okay? So we spoke about your wife being checked out, in the previous section. Well, why is that? Why is she checked out? And the answer is actually quite simple. Maybe hard for you to accept, but it's quite simple. She has been giving you signals for 2+ years that things are not working and that, something needs to shift. You, on the other hand, most likely didn't see these signals or didn't take them seriously and avoided doing something about it. Now, why would you avoid doing something about it? Well, I don't know. You downplayed it. You downplayed the importance of it. You believe that your vows allow you to do whatever you want because she's committed to it anyway. She made that promise, right? You escaped into work or alcohol or, substances or porn, right? You went on the passive aggressive side, right? And took an offensive position where you yelled at her, you argued, you made her wrong, right? The reality is that in her mind, and again, this is whether you like it or not, or whether you agree with it or not, in her mind, she fundamentally believes that she has been working on the marriage for 2+ years. And what did she get in return? Well, definitely not cooperation, right? What she probably got was either avoidance, arguments, tit for tats with justifications about who is wrong and who is right, defensiveness, yelling, lack of presence during communication and you kind of being checked out of the conversation. Um, Constant power struggle. I mean, between the two of you, which would probably kind of aggregate everything that I just mentioned, which is a lot of ego engaged as well. So, I mean, put yourself in her shoes, right? Assuming that what I'm saying is true, put yourself in her shoes. So imagine you're trying to get through to her for 2+ years with no results. What would you do, right? What would be your take on next steps? How would you feel about wanting to work on the marriage at that point? And listen, I get it. There are legit reasons why you didn't see those signs from her, or potentially why you didn't understand them. Okay. So I'm not blaming you for this, because I know you didn't have the right tools in your hand, or the right knowledge. And at the same time, I am highlighting this because it is important for you to understand how this works, right? If you take what I said personally, then all the more reason you need to look at that, because it definitely is showing up in your marriage. And the way you do one thing is the way you do everything.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because there's so much false evidence that a man can actually use almost as an excuse, right? To ignore the signs that we're being given. Okay, oh, I thought she had just changed, or she's always tired now these days, or she's boring now that we have kids, or there's so much time that she just invests into the kids. Like, what about me? Or no matter what I did, she always made me out to be the problem. So why would I really want to hang out with that? Like, why would I want to invest time into that when I could feel more successfully at work? Okay, but the tit for tat attitude actually has nothing to do with the relationship. It's all to do with hey, I got hurt, or I'm frustrated,
Mhm.
so I'm gonna hurt you. I'm gonna do my best to frustrate you. Why? Because I feel frustrated. And when a man really starts to see what he's become, it actually gives him options, right? It gives him options to alter what his future can look like.
Mhm.
But let's continue with a bit more knowledge, because I think it's going to help. It's going to help create that roadmap for men to actually look at.
Yeah, and hopefully see the vicious cycle too that kind of
Hmm.
starts showing up. Okay, the third component here, and again, these are not in order of importance. They're all equally important. Okay, for you to understand. So this one is the feminine and masculine have different roles. So one of the key reasons why the previous 2 points have taken place in your marriage, which is, she's checked out and she's giving you signs and signals that you didn't see. This is because you do not have an understanding and or acceptance, both are important, of the fact that the masculine and feminine roles and character traits are very different. And the major impact that has on your marriage, right? This is not about being equal, or having the same share of the chores. No, this is about recognizing that men and women are wired differently. They communicate differently, they react differently, they interpret situations different. They have different reasonings for why they do the things that they do. They have different needs, wants, and desires. They think differently. They approach problems differently. They raise and interact with kids differently, right? There's just so many differences that it is impossible to be in a healthy marriage without actually recognizing, accepting, understanding this fact. Okay. And let's look at today's world. In today's world, where women have more freedom, more flexibility, more opportunity to earn income, and less reason to be dependent on a man for survival, like, jokes aside, it becomes even more important to not ignore the differences between the feminine and the masculine, right? Essentially understanding this is what I'm trying to say, that essentially understanding this and respecting both masculine and feminine is the antidote to these changes in society, right? The shifts that women have experienced in it throughout the last few decades, right? When you understand these differences and you actually play your role in it, then you are becoming a magnet for your wife. And the desire for her to leave you becomes less and less. And really, there are two reasons for this, right? Most men don't know the differences. So when she encounters somebody else, it is not an if, but a when she figures out that the other guy has no clue about these differences, right? But you do if you put in the work. So it's your opportunity to demonstrate that. Now, this same if there's an affair or before an affair, right? I just gave the affair one as an example. Then secondly, you will fulfill a very important need for the feminine as part of your role being done in the masculine, which is emotional safety and security. This by far is the most important thing for your wife in the marriage.
And let's be honest, for the majority of new men who come into the Bulletproof Husband, there is a fundamental need for them to alter and to shift how they look at their role in the relationship. Now, Andre touched on it earlier. This is not about blame. We're not talking about, blaming you or blaming her for where the relationship is at. We're actually just really asking, hey, are you being 100% responsible for your role in the relationship? And when men actually allow themselves to be honest and to answer that question honestly, to own the fact that they're not being 100% responsible, hey, I thought it was a partnership. I thought I could be 50% responsible and she'd be 50% responsible. No, you got to be 100% responsible for who you are as a husband.
Mm-hmm.
And that shift in mindset actually opens the door to change. And change for man is easier to understand when they understand the why. So let's explain a bit more about the why.
Okay. Bullets and ego causing control. So some men are aware that they are controlling, and some men are just not. Either way, the leading cause of divorce is control. Okay, some form or shape of control, whether it is intentional or unintentional, regardless, if the man admits to it or not, it doesn't matter. Okay, it is happening, and I guarantee you that there's some degree of control that you've been consistently demonstrating in your marriage. There's no way a woman can feel suffocated or lose her identity in marriage unless there's aggressive or passive aggressive, manipulative, controlling behaviors at play for years. In the average marriage, when I say years, right? You might be listening to this and you've been married 1 year. Okay, they can show up early on as well, but then there were other challenges. But on average, like 2+ years we're talking, right? Now this causes lack of safety, especially emotional safety, and creates this kind of prison-like environment where she feels trapped. And then what happens? Well, she starts to react more and more viciously to the unresponsive behaviors to her previously mentioned signs and signals, right? That things are not working. The whole relationship kind of becomes, driven by your and her bullets and ego. Bullets as in insecurities for any new viewers. Arguments escalate and become just more frequent and more ugly. The distance between the two of you becomes more wide. The space becomes cold and rigid and filled with fear, of when the next bitch session is happening, or when the next disapproval of how you are showing up or doing things starts to be voiced by her again, right? She starts to take away sex, intimacy. She starts to be on her phone all the time. She starts to make excuses for not, making dinner or for going out with friends, right? All of this starts to hurt more and more. And you become more and more reactive to it because of the hurt. Okay? You are just wanting to understand what's going on, why all this is happening. But in reality, similar things are happening on her side as well. But she's becoming more and more checked out, more and more apathetic to the whole situation, to the whole marriage, to you, because she's at a loss. And you are coming to this point where you are becoming this man at a loss. Okay? Now, when this goes on long enough, that's when she gives you the slap.
Yeah, and that's why at TBH, we really need to deal with and work with men. Why? Because A, we are men and we know men. And we place a huge focus on helping men to control what they can, which, by the way, is everything in relation to themselves. And by dealing with bullies and ego, which in so many cases have been controlling men for years, we help men to get to a place where they do not need to control their wives because they no longer blame her or they no longer see her as the catalyst, for the misery that they're having in their lives, right? And that's why that shift away from blame into responsibility is a key component of getting onto this next topic, which is trust is broken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let me bring that up. Yeah. So this is the next kind of component, because by the time your wife gives you the slap, the level of trust from her to you is pretty much non-existent, right? In fact, I'll go as far as it's negative. Okay. And I want you to kind of look at this as like a bank account, but the currency is not money, it's trust, right? So your balance in the trust account is severely in the negative when you get the slap. Could be close to zero, but in most cases, severely negative. So when you get the slap, that's negative, given the years of kind of erosion. I'll call it erosion of the balance from kind of positive to zero and then down to negative, right? That takes years to get there, to get eroded. There's a high level of trust when you first get married, when you date, when you get married, everything is hot and heavy, right? And then things start to take place, right? You have kids, you buy a house, responsibilities, chores, putting bacon on the table, all of the things that start to have you not look at the relationship, same on her end as well. And over time, this trust gets eroded. And then with the vicious cycles of her giving you signals consistently, that further accelerates the kind of erosion of trust, right? So she no longer trusts you in any area as it pertains to the marriage. She has lost all faith that you are a man capable of being by her side, or a man capable of fulfilling her crucial feminine needs like emotional safety and security. And then add on top of all of this, her self-image, her self-image as a woman, her self-image as a wife, as a mother, like it's totally shattered, which is leading her to kind of point the finger to who? To you, towards you, right? Like when she hasn't given you signals and signs for so long, when she's been trying to fix stuff and she feels like she's been working on the marriage, you haven't been listening, you haven't been hearing her, and then that vicious cycle starts, right? And trust gets eroded. Who's she going to blame? You. Now, whether it's justified or not is irrelevant. Remember what I said in the beginning of this training. It's not about who's wrong or right. I'm just telling you what she's experiencing. And she thinks you are the cause of all of this. And I get it that from your perspective, listening to this, it's probably hard to hear all of this, but it is what it is, right? Again, it's not about right or wrong. It's just, what her feelings are dictating to her based on her experience. That's all that is, right? So you can be kind of upset about it or instead understand it and do something that can cause a shift in her feelings towards you. Because remember, women feel and then act. If you want your wife to act differently, alter her feelings, okay? And rebuilding trust with her is vital to have any chance of saving the marriage, okay? And as surprising as it may be, the actions to rebuild trust has nothing to do with her and is fully and only in your control.
Yeah, and there's that word again, right? Control. So I really hope that men are starting to see that we do fundamentally believe in control, and it's control in relation to you, not others around you, right? There is actually a sense of freedom available when a man has done the work necessary to be able to give up the need of controlling others. It shifts him away from being a victim, right? It shifts him away from life happening to him rather than life happening for him. And it is not simply a change in mindset. Doing it that way would all just be done by willpower, which is a short-term fix. We're talking about doing the necessary work on yourself so that your way of being is altered, not just a mindset.
Okay. Now, I want to connect all of this, okay, for you. Kind of connecting the dots, and it had the kind of the backbone of this is that a marriage breakdown follows a very specific path. Okay, so let's take everything that we've talked about and kind of bring it all together. So almost all marriages break down the same way. They follow the same path, and kind of crucial elements or milestones of that path, right? And a lot of these items are that we've talked about in the previous sections. By now, these milestone points discussed hopefully started to make sense and kind of sink in for you. And I'm also hoping that you started to relate some of them within your marriage. Maybe you have examples of situations that come up that resonated as John and I were speaking to different points, right? So, assuming all of the above is true that we have kind of discussed, and I know they are because we have been proving it for, again, almost a decade with thousands of case studies. But then tell me this, please. If what we have said so far is correct and accurate, then tell me this. If your wife is so checked out, right? If your wife thinks you are the barrier to her happiness and self-identity, right? If your wife wants nothing to do with the relationship and she doesn't want to talk about it or take any action around it, and if your wife doesn't trust you and how you are in the relationship, how you're showing up, she doesn't trust that anymore. And if your wife is hell-bent on leaving you or cheating on you, if all of these are in place, then tell me this. How the hell can you expect her to work on the marriage with you just because you are ready to do so now? Like, how is that possible that you need two people to save your marriage, both you and your wife to save the marriage? Can you see how ridiculous that is? Can you see how that's not how that works? Can you accept the fact that you have to actually take actions by yourself in order to alter her feelings? Because where her feelings are now, she's not going to do anything. So waiting on her to make an effort in the marriage when she believes from her perspective that she's been doing that for 2+ years is just not going to happen. Can you actually surrender to the fact that only and only actions you take moving forward from here on, those are the only actions executed by you that will cause a shift in this whole dynamic? And this is why we say that only one person is required to save a marriage. And thinking otherwise, not only it will lead to more blame and more resentment and more arguments, but it will accelerate the divorce process. It will accelerate her wanting to leave you.
Yeah, it's a good time because I often will try to take men out of their relationship scenario and look at other aspects of their life, right? So I want you to think about any leader that you recognize and respect in your life. Maybe it's a historic figure. Maybe, it was a coach you had in school. Maybe it's a colleague at work. Now think about why you respect them as a leader. Is it because of their communication? Do they have clear goals? Do they have an unwavering commitment to a cause? Perhaps it's their ability to relate to people. And I'm highlighting this because within the Bulletproof Husband, we relate to you as the leader in your relationship, and you as a leader with respect to who you are as a husband. And you can have the same level of leadership that you recognize and respect in somebody else by simply focusing on being the type of leader you need to be. That's fundamentally what we do in TBH.
Yeah. Exactly. And I know a lot of the stuff we talked about can be overwhelming, and you're probably asking, well, okay, this is all great, so now what, right? And if you've been following us, you already know we give you tons of stuff to actually get started. So Of course, the actions you take must be actions that have, one, proven to work, and you've got to be clear about them, right? Like, the stuff you've been doing hasn't worked, so I want to offer you some resources, as I said I would in the beginning of the training, right? And these are free and actionable that you can actually implement, and they have proven to work time and time again. But you put it to the test and you let me know, okay? So what I want to do is I'm going to give you 4 of those. Well, actually, I lied. 5 of those 8 free resources, okay? So we got a hard copy book, 330 pages, which is a free book. The book is on us. The only thing you got to take care of is shipping and handling. We're talking like $10. And then it's going to come with 3 bonus trainings, okay? And a free template. All of these are designed to have you implement. We get it that the book is going to take some time to arrive. So we don't want you to just wait for the book. We also want to give you actionable things that you can start doing and implementing some of these things we're talking about, okay? So put book in the comments, and then John will give you a link where when you click on that link, you can get started on that process, okay? So put book in the comments, and then we'll give you that link. All right. Now, I want to go into 3 other topics that are related to this main topic that we've talked about so far, okay? And the first one of that topic, if I can click it here, will be that you are controlling, right? Again, even though you may not see it, you are controlling. I guarantee you that there's aspects of that, okay? Because control is, like, it's an interesting phenomenon, right? You can be the most subtle and the kindest person, yet still execute control in your marriage. Or you can be the, typical alpha dog who's obviously controlling and without any shame controlling. And then there's everything in between, right? I gave you the 2 kind of spectrums, the kind and the alpha, or I guess some call it beta. And then everything else in between, right? You control, as I said, can be unintentional. It can be intentional. Now, intentional being here, like, I just want to kind of deep dive into that. Like, intentional means that you are controlling on purpose, and you know very well that you are controlling, okay? Unintentional, on the other hand, is that when you're controlling from this unintentional place, you're actually unaware that you are doing it. You're doing it, it has an impact, but you're unaware about it. Now, either way, here's the key thing to understand. Both are driven by insecurities that are actually forcing you to be in survival mode, okay? In the hope of maintaining some sort of certainty in your marriage, in your life. Because when you feel in control, you feel a level of certainty that is calming for you. If you feel out of control, it's not a comfortable place to be. And there's survival behaviors that we tend to develop because of our insecurities that have us behave in a way that wants us to seize control, right? The problem is that it comes with a price, because nobody wants to be controlled, right? Or at least nobody wants to feel controlled, and your wife will feel controlled, right? It's not an if, but a when. Now, there are certain situations where control is needed, and believe it or not, there are situations where you should be controlling, okay? So this is what we're going to discuss. We're going to discuss what are the things to focus on to recognize where you should be, when you should be controlling, and where you should not be controlling, okay? With like certainty and clarity. All right. And the first component, or the first area to look at, are your terms. Terms as a way to actually be controlling, okay? For anybody who's new, terms are the total sum of your masculine identity, okay? You already have terms, usually between 1 and 4, minimum 1, maximum 4, no more than that, okay? The process that you need to go through is identifying them, if you haven't already, okay? Terms are the only thing you can control in your life and marriage, and they do not depend on anybody else, not even your wife. You have full control of your terms. I am a man that takes care of his family's safety, security, financially, emotionally, physically. One of my terms. My other term is I am a man that makes a difference in other men's lives. Those are my two terms. I have two terms. These I do not compromise. Okay? And you should never compromise your terms, especially for the marriage or the relationship, because what starts to happen is you start to become pretentious, right? When you do that, you are pretending to be someone you're not. You won't be true to who you are, which means that you would essentially be lying to your wife because you would be pretending to be a different man than who you really are, right? And as a husband, for you to not do that, you got to identify your terms, become very clear about it, and then surrender to the commitment of not compromising them ever. Okay? Now, this is within your terms. You got full control. Now let's look at the next part, right? Like what happens outside of your terms. So outside of your terms, you should never be controlling at all. Okay? And believe it or not, like it actually makes your life easier when you know your terms, because it starts to guide you where to control and where not to. So I gave you my two terms, and you're probably thinking, holy shit, like that's the only two areas where he controls. And I'm telling you, without any hesitation, it is more than enough. When you take those two terms and you actually spread them out, map them out across your entire life, including marriage, work, business, friends, kids, whatever, all areas, it's not like to uphold those two terms and not compromise them. Like it's a lot of control. Okay. So don't think because I said it so succinctly that it's, oh my God, it's a lot of control. Okay. Now, the thing with terms also that I guess I'll call it the sandpit analogy, okay? Terms create kind of like a sandpit with the borders around it, okay? Your terms being the borders. Now, in this sandpit, your wife can manage the relationship. And it creates safety for your wife because she will only manage the relationship outside of your terms. That gives her clarity, right? And the terms giving the border, she understands. And you'll gain her respect because you know your terms and because you're holding up your terms. Okay? So from you to her, it becomes a great service to the relationship, because when you know your terms and you don't compromise them, it gives that clarity for her by being able to know what to manage the relationship within, and knowing that you're not going to compromise who you are as a man for the relationship. And that's how you actually let her know about the boundaries, because she will test you to try to have you compromise your terms. And when you keep committing to not compromising them, doesn't matter if it pisses her off or not, she will respect you for that. And she'll start to figure out what these boundaries are in which she can manage the relationship. So it's a huge service and important. Okay? I have never spoken to my wife about my terms, like ever. But yet, if you were to ask her, she would be able to tell you who I am as a man because of how I've been showing up. Okay. Now, the caveat with terms is that they're not enough. Terms alone are just not enough to gain control back of control, if you will. Okay? Because this is what we are talking about, is how do you know where to control and how do you know where not to? And terms alone are not enough. Okay? Knowing your terms is a great compass, guidance to get rid of the unnecessary control in your marriage. Because once you know what's outside of your terms, you know not to control there. But a man in addition to knowing his terms, needs to become emotionally self-sufficient. Because if you are not, then the emotional triggers when your wife says XYZ, that it takes place, will push you to compromise your term if emotional self-sufficiency is not in place. Okay? So in other words, if a man has not pulled his bullets, his insecurities, then the emotional trigger will overpower and have him compromise himself, even though he knows his terms. So that this means that in addition to knowing your terms as a man, father, and husband, you must also become emotionally self-sufficient, emotionally in control of your emotions, so that you are complementing the other threat. You get to know your terms, you commit to not compromising them, and then you become emotionally self-sufficient, fully in control of your emotions. So it doesn't matter what your wife says, your commitment to your terms will stay intact because you do not get triggered.
Yeah, and there's actually a great way for men to check in with themselves, right? To see where they're at emotionally. Okay. And it's as simple as asking this question, are there things in my life that I am doing, but I know not to do? Or perhaps there are things that I'm not doing in my life, which I know to do. And you can look at this and you can take that question for any area of your life, whether it's your finances, your health, your spiritual domain. If you answer that question honestly, it will actually give you direction around the areas to work on to improve your self sufficiency. Because depending on your answer to those questions, a lot of it will be driven by your bullets. But if you're doing something you know not to do, there's a fundamental reason why you're doing that, which 99.999% of the time is related to a bullet. It's related to your emotional insufficiency rather than sufficiency. And that's a great topic, actually, to tie in with the next giveaway.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you may not even be seeing where you are controlling, where you are not controlling. And some of these tools, like, it takes some effort to identify and implement them. So what we want to do is give you resource number 6, which is a training. Okay. This is a training with a phone call at the end. Okay. With one of our coaches, 1 hour, no obligation, free coaching call. You watch the training. It's about 45 minutes. We'll give you tons of value, change many lives. And then at the end, there's going to be a link to book a call. So in addition to what's in the training and all these concepts that we're talking about, you can now get on a call with one of our coaches and get clarity. Bring any questions that you may have coming up that you need help with, so that you know what the next step is and how to take action. So the way to get this is just put call in the comments. And when you have done that, John will send you a link, and you can click on that link and kind of start watching the training and get going. However, don't watch the training now. We have 2 more topics that we're going to actually go through. And next one is, she's at fault in messing up your marriage. And I'll explain my smile in a second. Okay, so put call in the comments if you want the coaching call and the training. And for now, we're going to go into this next section. She is at fault for messing up your marriage. Okay, let's kind of set some context here, because I don't know about you, but it sounds very satisfying to say that out loud, right? And I if you look at it, probably if you say it out loud, it might sound a bit satisfying for you also, right? Putting all the blame on her and just kind of Bob's your uncle. It's her fault. But if only things worked this way. The reality is that, where your marriage is at has nothing to do with who is right or wrong, or who there is to blame, because it's not about that. It's about responsibility for each party within the marriage. And the only thing that you can and should focus on is looking at your part, why the marriage is not working, and kind of owning those parts. And we're going to keep coming back to this again and again and again, because I told you, we focus on what you can't control, and we focus on what we know moves the needle. And those are the actions that you take and how you're showing up. Okay? When you do that, things start to fall in place magically, right? I, I said magically, but that's kind of bullshit because there's a science behind it. There's no magic really. When you start leading from a place of responsibility and owning each and everything that you are and how you're showing up, that you're responsible for, in the marriage, it starts to spill over to your wife, and trust starts to get rebuilt. So, assuming you want to save your marriage, which is why else would you be here? Let's kind of discuss the 3 steps to focus here. Okay. So first one is awareness. You don't know what you don't know. There are things you did in marriage which contributed to the breakdown of it, and yet you have no idea that you did them, right? Most likely because those were automatic behaviors, right? Based on bullets. You need to get clear on what those areas are, and the best way to do that is through healthy masculine relationships. But these have to be men who don't judge you, who have been in your spot, and they have been able to actually save their marriage, right? Or rebuild themselves to a level where they have a great co-parenting relationship with their wife or ex-wife or girlfriend or long-term committed relationship, okay? And the key thing is they should be able to give you insight without judgment and help you see those things, which you clearly haven't seen before. It's a huge value. And the fastest and most powerful and most impactful spot that can come from is healthy masculine relationships. All right. Second one are tools, right? Once you see the areas that actually need ownership and need change, then you need to develop a toolkit, which gives you confidence, which you can use, right? These are tools that drive implementation and action. These are tools that you can understand and use easily and well. These are tools that have proven to work in other husbands' marriages, right? It's a toolkit that that, hey, I got to work on this. I'm going to take that tool out. And when I say tool, obviously I'm not talking about physical tool. I'm talking about actionable steps that you can go implement. Okay? So once you become aware of what your areas of responsibility is, you then need to create a toolkit where there are tools in there which have been proven to work and allow you to action on them. Okay? And then, of course, last one, the next part is consistent action. Proven success at this point is your only reliable measure that you have available to trust that you are on the right path. Because your wife will not give you that satisfaction when you start to work on yourself and the marriage, right? You need to surrender and commit to consistently implementing the tools that you previously developed, okay? That you have in your toolkit. But you got to do it in a way where you're not actually doubting it, okay? When you implement the tools that are proven to work over and over and over again, then it will give you the confidence to actually stick with it regardless of how things look on the surface level. Okay? Which is going to tie into one of our next section around things being worse than better. Okay? So very important.
Yeah, and we get it, right? Most men don't need a map, right? They're going on a road trip from A to B with their wives, and the wife asks, "Hey, are we lost?" And typical husband, "No, we're not lost. We're just going a different way," right? And but I do want to highlight for a lot of men who just got the slap, they are lost. We see it day in, day out when men join TBH, and they have been going. They've been going a different way for a long time, and they are about to run out of gas. Everything that Andre just spoke about, it's the map, right? TBH has the map, and it's a map that thousands of men have used, lost men that have used, who have actually made it safely to their destination. So you actually don't need to spend Another night, another cold night, alone in the wilderness, trying to figure this stuff out on your own. There are thousands of men in a tribe who can relate to you, who can relate to what you're going through. Why? Because they've been there, they understand it,
Yeah.
but they also know what's available as a result of doing this work.
So important. So important and so critical. And I cannot emphasize that, right? And again, it really becomes your only anchor. When you hear from so many men, okay, if it worked for him, there must be something to it, right? That's really your only cling on, because your wife's not going to give you that satisfaction. Okay, we're going to go to the next section in a moment, which is fixing your marriage makes everything worse. But before that, I want to give you resource number 8. Okay, this is our free daily email mentorship. So essentially, you get an email from Monday to Sunday on different various topics, and yeah, huge value. So delivered into your inbox, 7 a.m. Eastern Standard is when I send it out, and yeah, there's actionable stuff there too, and context shifts. Right, a lot of our members read these emails because they get a good context shift in how to show up for that day at home or even at work and other places. Put daily in the comments, and John will send you the link to get registered for the free daily email mentorship. And then now, let's go in. Fixing your marriage makes everything worse. This is really probably the biggest mistake that husbands make when trying to fix their marriage, which is measuring their success on how their wife behaves or what she says. Okay? And I started to allude to this earlier. So in other words, when a husband starts to work on himself, actually take action, they right away look at their wife to determine if they are on the right path. And in almost all cases, the wife signals the exact opposite of what they would want to see. No, you are not on the right path, asshole. Like that's the signal back from her. And this happens because, after the slap, trust is low, and your wife automatically assumes you are manipulating her back in the relationship, which is accurate in a way. You are manipulating her back, okay? But there's negative manipulation, there's positive manipulation. Negative is when you're the only one benefiting. Positive is when others are benefiting as well, okay? And at this point, she doesn't trust that these changes that she's seeing based on the stuff you're implementing, that they're here for the long term, okay? So what will happen is that she will test these changes that she's seeing. And those tests will make the marriage look like it's getting worse. In other words, it makes it look like you are not on the right path, right? She'll pull out the divorce card. She'll talk about the boyfriend. She'll go out late at night and not call you. She'll push you away and create space and not text you for 2 days. She doesn't say, I love you anymore, whatever. She starts to do things that have you be tested. What would a typical husband do at this point? If this is clearly not working and are only making things worse, when in reality, little it's actually the opposite. Things are going by the book. And here's the thing. This is the most important time to remain on the path. Because when you pass these tests, these rebuild trust the fastest possible way. When you pass her tests consistently, rebuilds trust extremely fast. Okay, so let's look at why all of this happens and kind of what to do about it. All right, so first thing you need to recognize and realize, you trained your wife over the years. Since the beginning of your marriage, you have indirectly trained your wife to react, to behave, to speak a certain way. And as a result, she gotten used to that. You showed up a certain way. You reacted a certain way, which had her get trained to react and behave and speak a certain way, right? In other words, you have become predictable as a result, because she now knows almost always how you're going to react, what you will say, or kind of do in anticipation of her actions and her words. So when she says or does X or Y, she has a very good probability predicting how you're going to react, how you're going to behave, what you're going to do next. And you need to recognize that this is a natural part of marriage when two people get together, and there will be significant influence on each other. So recognize that you have trained her. Okay, so second, you now have to untrain her. Okay, once you have accepted that you have trained her to behave, react, and speak a certain way because of how you showed up over the years, then you can kind of come to this next step, right? Which is how to untrain her. Now, how do you untrain her in the first place, right? How did you train her in the first place? Well, through your actions and behaviors. So how do you untrain her? Well, through your actions and behaviors. This means you need to alter certain behaviors that do not serve the relationship and things that you're not proud of as a man, father, and husband by being responsible for those areas and actually owning them. When you implement these new behaviors over time, you are untraining her from the old behaviors to the new behaviors. Okay? And this comes with this. Your marriage will look worse than before short term. Because in the process of untraining her from the old behaviors to the new ones, she will rebel against it. And this is mainly because she doesn't trust the new version of you that she's experiencing. She thinks you are just manipulating her for your own gain, for your own benefit, and she doesn't believe what she's experiencing is actually going to stay for long term. She believes that your changes are kind of spur of the moment, and as soon as she gives into them, she's afraid you're gonna go back to the old behaviors. Okay. Now, as a result of this thinking and this belief inside her, she will start testing your changes hard. These tests from the outside, when you look from the outside in, like it makes it look like your marriage is getting worse. And if you think about it, what's the only thing that changed? You decided to do something about your marriage. You're going to implement these new behaviors. So now what? My marriage is getting worse? And the only thing that changed is I'm implementing these tools and things that I've been told to do? This doesn't make sense, right? So now you naturally would think that you are causing the marriage to be worse. But no, it's not the case at all. In fact, it's right on track. It's by the book. And it's the exact opposite of that feeling that you're getting. And why? Because you would do the same thing. If your wife all of a sudden changed after years, decades in marriage, and started to demonstrate the behaviors that you've been looking for so long, that the relationship has been needing, you would be like, what's going on? You would want to know why it's happening. You would want to justify that. Okay? So the key becomes consistency and managing your image as a man, father, and husband. Okay? What's required for you to succeed and have her trust you again is consistency. You need to stay consistent in implementing the tools and demonstrating this new version of you. And this is especially important when she's testing you. Because if you stop, what are you doing? Then you are just proving to her that, you know what, this really was a spur of the moment. This was a spur of the moment thing, and the changes are actually not real. I just wanted to please you, and I just wanted to pretend I'm this new guy, but I can see it's not working, so you know what, F it. But when you pass her tests and continue to stay the course, she will have no other option but to just surrender to the fact that this is a new version of you.
Yeah, and it's not even just about she will have no other choice but to surrender to it. She will want to surrender to it. Not like she's going to be backed into a corner. She will want to surrender to it because that new version of you, that's someone that she can actually see herself with going forward. And there's also a reality check that I want to put in here. Like, men are not in the situation that you are in. Man, you're not in that situation because you messed up, over a period of a week. You're in that situation because you've messed up over a long period of time. And I think, that there's a magic wand that just exists and it's going to go and make this all okay overnight. Like, that's just naive. It's a bit like someone who's 100 pounds overweight, but now they're sorry for eating all that fast food, and they didn't eat fast food yesterday. So surely the weight should just fall off. Like, that's not the way this works. But what does work is the consistency. What does work are the tools and the systems. And how do we know? Because we've proven it time and time again.
Yeah. Oh wow. Okay. There's a video that I want to recommend, or a live training that we did, which blends really well with this topic. I want you to have a look at that when you get a second. It's called The Marriage Game Changer: A Husband's Emotional Self-Sufficiency. Okay. So you can just go to your YouTube channel and then search the title and it'll come up. I also recognize that, we covered a lot, and there are some men, we've given out lots of free resources, from 4 trainings to a template to a free hard copy 330-page book that kind of details all of this, to a free 1-hour coaching call and the daily email mentorship program. If you're ready to jump in and actually get in the tribe, and you're willing to invest into yourself, you can also join our flagship membership program as well, TBH VIP membership. Okay. Put VIP in the chat and or comments, and then we'll send you the link to get started with that. Okay. Otherwise, there's a bunch of other free resources. And I want to say thank you for following us. Thank you for your support. And we'll continue to be coming here weekly, ideally on Thursdays. There might be some weeks where we have to shift that around. For example, we have a retreat coming up, which is going to require us to maybe do it earlier. But yeah, thanks for the support. Really appreciate it. And I don't know, any closing stuff for you from you, John?
Again, it's not just the support of us. Like, it's the support of what we're about and what this work is about. And I've mentioned it before, and the huge respect and admiration that we have for every man that's here, every man that's in our tribe, every man that's been in our tribe and done a lot of that work. Like, for me, it speaks volumes to who you truly are as men. And yeah, some days are tough, right? It's not plain sailing the whole way. But as I said, we've seen enough men that stay the course because they're committed to something bigger. And we appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, we're out for this week. Leave us any comments, any questions, let us know. And have a fantastic weekend. And then we'll be here next week. Until then, take care.
Bye, man.